Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas here with you this morning, visiting with Major Tom Grace from the Canton Salvation Army. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm sure you hear this all the time. You couldn't have a more perfect last name than to represent what you do,
Well,
Major Grace.
Thanks, Susie.
We're talking about Major Grace.
Yeah, Major Grace is what I need. It's not always how I act, but it's what I need for sure.
We all do. How long have you been involved with the Salvation Army? Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I and my wife have been involved with the Salvation Army our entire lives. My parents were Salvation Army officers. My wife's parents were Salvation Army officers. But in terms of officership in the Salvation Army, my wife and I will celebrate our 25th year this coming June. I was an employee with the Salvation Army for about 16 years prior to becoming an officer. So for the better part of my life, I've been involved.
An employee with the Salvation Army? I guess I've never known anyone who worked for Salvation Army who was not an officer. What kinds of other jobs are there?
I have 22 employees in Canton,
wow.
and they run the gamut from social services to soup kitchen. We have a development person. We have individuals who work in our senior citizens program, and they are all very committed and dedicated people. And prior to being an officer in the Salvation Army, I ran a community center in Dayton, Ohio for the Salvation Army. So it's been in our blood our whole lives.
So does a person who works for the Salvation Army necessarily go to the Salvation Army church, or do you have people from many denominations?
Yeah, it's not required. And we do have folks from other denominations who are employees of ours, and then we have some who also attend our congregation. It's certainly not a requirement. It's tough work, and the commitment level is very important. And certainly we believe it absolutely necessary that individuals understand, who come to work for us, understand who we profess. It's not a requirement to profess Christ. But certainly in keeping with who we profess, that is how we expect our individuals to carry themselves. So what do we find, frankly, Susie, is that those who work for us are believers in Christ, and that certainly makes the mission go that much more effectively.
You're relatively new to town, and part of being in Salvation Army is that move, isn't it? Is that tough?
Yeah, it is. Well, and actually, you're sitting across somebody who's kind of an oddity in the Salvation Army. Our last appointment was 15 years in Wadsworth, Ohio. So we literally moved 30 minutes from front door to front door, although we moved everything, including the two dogs, from front door to front door. But it was 15 years. In fact, my wife and I are the longest serving Salvation Army officers in Wadsworth history. And it was tough to leave, frankly. It was tough to leave. We left children behind. We have 3 adult children. My wife is going to listen to this, so I have to pass this test at sea. The oldest is 36. The middle one is 34. And we have a son. The oldest are daughters, and we have a son who is 28, who is in nursing school. Our oldest daughter is actually an employee of the Wadsworth Salvation Army. She runs all of the education programs there. She's a certified teacher and has been working there about 11 years now. So we left children in Wadsworth, and fortunately it is only 30 minutes from door to door. Some of my peers would move from Ohio to New York and leave children behind. Right. So Debbie and I, my wife Debbie and I, feel very blessed to be in Canton for numerous reasons. Certainly one of the most important is that our children are that close. We have 5 grandchildren, and my children
that they're close.
Yeah, my children get very angry with me when I tell them that for the most part I don't like them as much as I like the grandchildren now. But we actually have a grandchild who will be graduating this June from Wadsworth High School.
Wow.
And a special fire and EMT program that they offer.
Wonderful.
So she's 18. I'm not going to be as good with the grandchildren. We have 2 granddaughters from my oldest daughter who are 10 and 8. We have a grandson who is 13, and we have another grandson who is 6 months old.
Oh,
so
how fun.
Our house is fun. It is very fun.
It's got to be fun at Christmas time.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Oh,
Yeah.
goodness, yeah. How do you feel you've been received in the Canton area? Hopefully you felt that you got a warm welcome and with open arms and got plugged in soon.
Sure, we do. Canton is obviously much larger than Wadsworth, and being in a community 15 years, you certainly you get to know the community really well. Canton is larger, and we're in the process of learning the community. We're thrilled to be here. We really are thrilled to be here. Operationally, comparison from Wadsworth to Canton, Canton's a much larger operation, and so we've had to make some adjustments personally, and we're not getting any younger, that's for sure. But we absolutely love the Canton area. We live in Jackson and love the area that we live in, and our family enjoys coming here. That's the most important thing to us, is they want to come here, so it's a good thing.
Right. Your goals since you've arrived, have you had a chance to set any?
Well, we're in the process of setting them now. Frankly, there were things that needed to be addressed. And so our first year has really been spent on maybe some stabilization. You think of Salvation Army officers moving all the time. Think of those employees who were constantly or every 5 years getting a new supervisor. Those are adjustments for them as well.
Yes.
There were some employees that were looking for change, and so we've had to make some changes. We spent a lot of time on personnel issues. We have a wonderful staff, just an absolutely wonderful staff, and I believe that you're going to see the Lord use this staff in special ways. But in terms of goals, I think that Debbie and I always have an overarching goal that we're found doing what the Lord wants us to do. This is the kind of work, and I don't believe that we're different than a lot of believers who will go to work every day, work hard every day, those who are in positions of authority who have to come up with ideas and those kinds of things. It's very easy to run ahead of the Lord in those things.
Yes, it is.
And so we are very careful. I'm not saying we get it always right. If I get it right about 51% of the time, I feel like I'm doing really well.
That's a good day.
But the fact is that our overarching goal is to take the Canton Salvation Army where the Lord intends it to be. And we are thrilled with some of the movement that we've seen, some of the positive forward movement. Again, Debbie and I are blessed to work with wonderful people who are committed to the mission of the Salvation Army, which really is meeting human need without discrimination, and bringing the gospel message forward in all that we do. And we have a committed staff that does that as well.
You really do, and you've got people who really depend on you and those services.
Yes.
Get to be some familiar faces around there. If anyone who's done some volunteering,
that is correct.
The folks.
That is correct. You develop relationships.
You really do.
It's critical that you do, I believe, because it doesn't matter where people are on the socioeconomic strata. People have a tendency to wear masks, and they're wherever they find themselves trying to put their best foot forward. And oftentimes that doesn't allow for the opportunity to really get to the heart of the need, to discuss the hard issues. And we're finding that as we're here longer, we're able to do that.
Let's talk about some of the services.
Sure.
I think people would be just blown away by how much you do.
Well, people think of the Salvation Army as the red kettle at Christmas time,
right?
Or the Salvation Army truck. They used to be red, now they're white, that comes and picks up donations, and that's really what they know of the Salvation Army, and that isn't their fault, frankly. I believe the responsibility for that rests with the Salvation Army. We don't spend a lot of money on advertising. We really try to direct the dollars that we receive to direct service. In Canton, we have a large feeding program. We feed approximately 25,000 meals a year.
It's incredible.
And the program meets on Sunday nights for the dinner hour, beginning from 6 to 7, and then on Monday at lunchtime from 11:30 to 1. Mm-hmm. The Monday lunch program is much larger, and we could serve 300 meals on a Monday. In addition to the meal being served, my wife and the social service director, Teresa, have worked to try and bring other groups in so that other services are available from other organizations. That's happening. So,
like what kind?
Some of them will be wellness services. AA is there. I'm gonna forget some of them, but we also have, and then we also on the Monday, if we have donated clothing or those kinds of things, we have a clothing table so people can be prepared for that. We have flu shots that come in, and so clients can access the flu shots. A lot of wellness programs are made available to them, and I think it's a good thing.
Let's talk about what that looks like, because I think people would be so surprised. What a dignifying way to have a soup kitchen. This is not a soup line. This is a really wonderful meal out. And there's camaraderie and there's fellowship around the table. And it's a sit-down dinner where you're served, where the dessert tray comes around and you get to choose.
Yeah.
It's done so well.
Oh, thank you, Susie.
Can you describe it better than I can?
Well, I think what we do is we have a cook on staff, and we also have an assistant cook that comes through the Mature Services program, and then we have a number of volunteers who come an hour or so early, and they help prepare the meal. The tables are set, so
you wait to be seated.
And we actually have somebody who handles seating and that kind of thing, and then. When the meal is served by a volunteer, brought to the individual at the table, and then, as you said, the dessert tray comes around, and a number of our volunteers will just circulate and talk. The bottom line is, and this is one of the things that Debbie and I have challenged our staff with, and it's not been a difficult challenge for them to meet, by the way, and that is that we can't say yes to everybody. The resources simply aren't there to say yes to everybody. But the bottom line is that no one should come into our facility and then leave our facility with less dignity than they came in with. That we understand that we can't meet everybody's need. We also understand there is great need. So on those occasions when we have to say no and we've run out of resources for the month, the bottom line is there's probably something else that we can do, whether it's a bag of groceries, whether it's sitting down with an individual and having them have the opportunity to tell us their story, get it off their chest. So we work diligently at that because dignity is critical.
We're visiting with Major Tom Grace from the Canton Salvation Army. Going to take a short break, and we'll be back after these words. You're listening to Our Community.